How you going?
Oh, you know exactly how I'm doing. I just aped into a CryptoPunk.
Yeah. That's why we're a couple minutes late here. You were like, just 1 sec, I got to buy this punk. Just got to FOMO in. So
Yeah.
I guess congrats on the purchase. It's always cool to see another punk person become part of the punk family.
Yeah. It's. I've been trying to be patient about it, but then all this punk activity just happened in the last it feels like 4 hours. Excuse my dog, which you can't see in the background. Um, 4 hours. Like the floor got swept. Like apes got bought. Gold chains everywhere. It's like, oh yeah. Like everyone likes to say like, oh, this like I'll take credit for this. I'll take credit for this. But on Bankless, we just had Andy 8052 on, and we talked about like the bullish case for punks and how NFT bear market's not over. So maybe it was that triggered it. Okay, man, what's
Mm-hmm.
up?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, there's a lot of FOMO today for sure. I mean, I woke up to it and I was like, oh, this is cool. I mean, I've only got one punk that I minted in 2017. It's just a floor punk, but it's funny because like I never want to sell that thing. Like the
mm-hmm.
floor is what, like 70K right now, or something at
Right.
29 ETH.
And like marching
Um,
very fast upwards.
exactly. So like I just don't want to sell my punk at all. Like it doesn't even look like me, and I can't
Mm-hmm.
show it off because it's on an address that I don't want made public. But like it's just you have an attachment to it, right? Like,
Right.
and I'm sure you'll get attached to yours over time, even though it's
I
newer.
fucking hope so. I better.
Considering how much money you just spent on it.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is good to point out is that how much of like the punk activity is priced in ETH, right? And how many people are using ETH to buy it. And
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of like this, ETH being used as real money here. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not just a meme. It's like ETH in a very big way. Like and it feels like ETH is like, I don't know if this is the right way to describe it, but it's like this premium money where you buy premium products with ETH. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of other kind of like NFTs being sold and bought with ETH, but it just feels like people are, there's a lot of ETH whales out there who are just like, yeah, I've made a lot of money on my ETH, and now I want to store it in like this punk thing or like an NFT or something. So, and I feel like if you're an ETH maxi and you made a lot of money on ETH, you have to have a punk. Like that's
Right.
Ethereum culture right
Right.
there.
It's like the number one that's definitely like the number one reason why I'm interested in punk specifically. Like I'm not really an NFT guy. I'm not really an NFT
hmm
guy. But like once there's enough of like a shelling point around specifically CryptoPunks, well all of a sudden anyone who has their brand of people that bought Ether throughout the 2018-19 bear market, bought it in size, completely convicted on it, did decently well based off of that conviction, they all have a punk. They all
hmm
got a punk.
hmm
And so like the punk is like the ETH maxi like NFT. And there's also something to be said about like it also kind of feels like it has the same genesis as so many other valuable things in the space because it has a genesis event, has an immaculate conception. Just like
hmm
Bitcoin had an immaculate conception, Ethereum had the immaculate ICO, punks had this immaculate just beginning where there was this experimental project. People thought it was really cool years ago, and then it just drifted off, and then it just randomly got picked up by. Did you ever listen to our Memetics podcast with? Yeah, it seems like everyone just kind of used the punks as like a shelling point, and the Memetics took over, and now everyone understands punks to be like the base layer, the M0 of all NFTs on Ethereum.
Yeah, and there can only really be like maybe just a handful, but like more like one or two of these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not something that you can have like a kind of like tens of sort of
Right.
thing. It's like it's funny because like when CryptoPunks started hitting up again like a few months ago, people started replicating that and still do it to this day, where they're
Right.
creating like 10,000 characters and they're getting money for it, and then everyone's changing their profile picture, but they're all just copies. It's
Right.
like forking Bitcoin, right? They're
Right.
all just forks of Bitcoin. Like none of them overtook Bitcoin's value, and Bitcoin
Right.
actually ended up getting more value because those forks brought
Mm-hmm.
more attention to Bitcoin. So it's like same with CryptoPunks, where the original being punks is not going to lose its value just because there's like essentially
Right.
what are forks out there
Right.
of punks.
Right.
So and I think that's probably what a lot of people miss is that they still like, I don't know, I think you said you're not an NFT guy. I just don't think you have to be an NFT guy or an art person or whatever to appreciate like digital collectibles. I mean, the funny thing about digital collectibles is that it's not just art or whatever. It's not just the art. It's kind of like the culture, the history, the kind of story
Right.
behind it. Think about something like physical Pokemon cards, like the Charizard card. There's a reason why that card is the most valuable in the entire set, right? There's a story behind it. There's nostalgia attached to it from when you were a kid playing these cards, and then you remember it. And there's certain rarity attributes kind of assigned to it, just like with punks. But without the history, without the story, without the culture, you're not going to have something very valuable, I think.
No, yeah, that's exactly right. Like all art is like symbolism, right? And we all like to define. And well, you said that, yeah, you said that there's like all these forks off of it, and there's so many of different of these like generative art like avatars. And when I've been talking to like the NFT people, the way they try and evaluate these things is like, all right, well, how many of these things are there? And if there's 10,000 of them, like how many people want those avatars, right? Like, are there 50,000 people who want these 10,000 avatars? Because then there'll be a little bit of a game. And so like CryptoPunks are like way too expensive for that to be turned into like a fun thing to do for like new entrants. Like only the deepest believers are going to be ready to put up that much money to like hold on to a CryptoPunk and to play the CryptoPunk game. But it's going to turn into like a generational cycle thing where there's going to be new like upcroppings of generative art avatars, and they're going to be cheap. And then people are going to use those as their avatars, and then some of those will stick. Right. And then some of them will like slowly rise to the top based off of Lindy over time. Like we saw Bored Apes do this. I think we're seeing Cool Cats do this. There's a couple other projects. And then as it goes and, goes deeper down, like what we would previously call like the shitcoin like waterfall or the euthanasia roller coaster of like, projects forking out into projects. Like it gets more and more speculative, but that's where the upside is. Right.
Yeah, and there's definitely something to be said about the fact that a lot of people, most people, are priced out of punks, right? And they want to be part of a community, and they want to be part of something where they can actually afford it. And that's why I think you're seeing these forks happen. And I think maybe there's a little bit of truth to that in the Bitcoin, like something like the Bitcoin forks as well, where people were like, well, I can't ever buy a whole Bitcoin because it's so expensive or something. Let's fork it and do something else. But I think with NFTs, it plays an even bigger role. So yeah, and I'm not saying like the other NFT projects that are similar to punks are garbage. A lot of them are, but like some of them have gone on to form their own communities, like Bored Ape Yacht Club. There's a couple of others, like you mentioned, Cool Cats and stuff like that. But really, for them to have longevity, you need a community that actually cares about it and actually wants to keep the story alive and keep and build like a culture and a history around it, or else it'll just die off. And I think that goes for like pretty much everything. But with kind of like NFTs, it's just a funny thing because CryptoPunks stayed quiet for so long. There were like some hardcore believers. I know there was like a few people buying them up during kind of like the bear market and stuff like that. They were worth basically nothing. And then their beliefs kind of paid off. But that could have easily gone the other way too. I think it's just that the story was there, the culture was there, and NFTs became like a big thing. So that could happen for other ones today, but it's just like placing bets is even harder today because you have to place the bet on the right one rather than trying to pick, because CryptoPunks is really the only one for a while. So not to say it was easy, but like the fact that they were the pioneer and the beginning there, I think that's going to be the thing that whales prefer, and that's why CryptoPunks are always going to trade very like at a huge kind of like value. But yeah, we're definitely going to see other projects spin up and gain kind of like attention.
And that's exactly why I think like CryptoPunks are specifically like optimized for people who aren't really NFT people, because like they get the shelling point of the first one. And so the reason why they are so highly priced is because they are the most like scalable, because everyone in Ethereum is like somewhat relates to them. And they feel like the water of NFTs, right? They were the first ones, and you have the assurances that it's going to of the resale value, and they kind of feel like the Bitcoin of NFTs. I guess I'm rehashing earlier points, but it's just like the most neutral NFT that there is, and because they're pixels, they're just 544 pixels or however many they are, and they do have much more of a story that fits behind them much more than Bored Ape Yacht Club, but I think that they are like the next in line, although very distant. But like there's a lot more like meaning and symbolism behind a CryptoPunk than anything else. And I think for other NFT projects, they're going to have to kind of generate. It's going to be a much harder than it was for them to generate that same sort of cultural zeitgeist than it is for CryptoPunks, because now it's in the same way that like Ethereum had the first like big successful ICO, and it tainted the waters for all ICOs afterwards, right? Because all following ICOs, they realized that Ethereum's ICO worked, and that taints it because you only get the some of the legitimacy of the Ethereum ICO came from the fact that no one had tried out the model before. Technically, that's not true, but it was really the first one that really was successful. Same thing with CryptoPunks, actually. CryptoPunks weren't the first NFT project either, but they were the first one that worked, right? And so they've kind of tainted every single one to come after it, because now every single one that comes after it, it's known that you can be extremely lucrative, and that ruins some of the legitimacy.
And there's also like the fairness of distribution as well. Like you're never going to get like one of these 10,000 kind of like character projects have like a fair distribution like what CryptoPunks did, and it's because of the fact that like punks had like hardly any value, right? People got to scoop them up over time. Like some people just minted one or bought one and just say, I'll just keep it to myself, and it was very accessible for for everyone to get into. And that was the same that happened with, I think, like Bitcoin in the early days, even ETH in the early days. Definitely had a pretty fair distribution. So I think that plays a big part into it as well, because no one wants to buy into a project where like one person owns like over half the kind of supply. Like a lot of people just think that is like incredibly unfair. It's not going to lead itself to a good community or lend itself to a good community, because there's just not going to be enough people that have access to buy this sort of stuff. And you have this like one mega whale kind of like hanging over everyone, and it's kind of like you feel like you're being ruled, and like you get rugged at any second by like this king. So yeah, from that perspective, I think punks are definitely very unique. But yeah, I mean that's just today. Like, there's so much that has happened since we've done this stream. I mean, you've been traveling a lot. You went to ETC and got COVID. And
got COVID. Yeah. By the way, if you can't tell from my background, I currently have COVID. Today's gonna be the last day that I'm like at 97% recovered. Like tomorrow, I'm gonna be completely back to normal. It was just really achy. Like COVID was really achy for me. And like the story of COVID at ECC is a really interesting one, because everyone was either vaccinated or coming in with negative tests. And then like a lot of people got it regardless. Like, well, it's in hindsight kind of to be expected, like international conference in France, like Delta variant. But what's crazy is that a decent number of people got it with the vaccine while they were vaccinated. A decent number of people got cold and cold symptoms that were roughly similar to what me and the other COVID positive people were experiencing. And when they got a test, they got negative. And they've had multiple tests, and multiple tests have come back negative. And it's like a complete crapshoot. And so kind of interesting little story, but like a lot of people got COVID at ECs.
Yeah. I think it's funny because like I was trapped here in my house and everything. I was in another lockdown in Melbourne, but like I wouldn't have gone anyway because I haven't got the vaccine or anything like that. I obviously like having the vaccine is a lot better than not having it.
You can't go without the vaccine. You like like I said, like it was okay. It was decently mild, and I had the vaccine. Right. Imagine what it would be without it.
Exactly. So yeah, I think like as much as I'm having FOMO over not being able to go to these sorts of things, I just have to kind of like wait it out. And I think just generally like conferences like what they were like pre-COVID, we're not going to have that for quite a while still. Like I know there are a lot of people who couldn't go to HCC, like not just me, there was a ton of people who couldn't go. And then just generally like we don't even have any timelines for a lot of them. Like DevCon, we have no idea. Like is DevCon still going to happen in Colombia? Like I don't think Colombia has a very good vaccine rollout. So are they gonna even accept people from kind of like various countries? Am I even going to be allowed to fly to Colombia from where I am? You know what I mean? So I think it's sad, but it's just the way it is right now. And it's funny because like for those of you who haven't been to ETH conferences, really you don't know what you're missing out on. Like they are the best things ever. This is just a celebration of Ethereum. Meet all your friends, kind of experience the culture. But hopefully, I feel like will be like most of the world will be like I guess like most countries around the world will have good vaccine rollout rates by mid next year. Pretty much like back to Australia will be able to travel to the US and stuff like that, and like all those kind of countries. I don't know about third world countries, but definitely the first world, you would expect them all to be mostly vaccinated by then. So hopefully we can get some more conferences going. But yeah, I think at this point in time, it's just like you just got to live with it. Once you've been vaccinated, there's not much else you can do, right? Really.
Like if I and other people were vaccinated and we got COVID, like like everyone welcome to the new normal. Like if
Mm-hmm.
vaccinated
Mm-hmm.
people are getting COVID and it's just being like a normal cold because thankfully vaccines work. But like it's likely the Delta variant that I got and other people got, as one would expect, because that's what's going around all of Europe and that's what's probably most likely getting past the vaccines. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like the COVID is just gonna fork again. And
Mm-hmm.
like even if we get a booster shot, like it's gonna make it better. But like really though, I think the only viable way to fight COVID is a combination of vaccines and getting it. Right? Just
Mm-hmm.
like getting it, you get the antibodies, you get the next vaccine, like you get the antibodies, you get the next vaccine. Like we're gonna just live with COVID and everyone's gonna be getting COVID probably multiple times for like the next 5 years until
Mm-hmm.
it's just part of
Mm-hmm.
like the new normal, which will have been by then. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, but yeah, not to make this into a COVID show, but
No,
I,
no,
I,
no.
I do totally agree with you that like we're not going to be aping into Ethereum conferences like I just aped into this CryptoPunk anytime soon.
That's it. That's it. But I guess like more positive news. What it's 1559 week.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
what is this 31st of July? It's the 30th of July for you, but 31st of
Right.
July for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's gonna go live in a few days. Like I think August 5th. Like even in the US, it's gonna be August 5th. I know for me, it actually could be August 6th. Like right now, it's saying 11:50 p.m. on August 5th my time, so it could even be August 6th for me. But it's finally here. Like oh
Mm-hmm.
my god,
Mm-hmm.
after more than 2 years, we are on the cusp of 1559, like so close. And you know what, man? I think it's the perfect timing for it. Market's heating up again, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
that means that gas fees are going to go up too.
Yep.
But we have layer twos this time. We
Yep.
have layer twos rolling out like
Mm-hmm.
pretty much every week. Something major happens in the layer two ecosystem. So we're going to have like, I guess, high fees on layer one still, but like a lot of new users that we're going to have coming in
Mm-hmm.
are going to be able to experience layer two. We're going to be burning ETH. I mean, man, I'm always bullish, but like I'm really bullish like in the past like couple of weeks, that's for sure.
No, it really does feel like a Goldilocks area where like right now gas fees are 30 and they've been kind of like 20, 30, 40ish for the last few days like what you said starting to heat up again and
Hmm.
we kind of just need it. I guess pre proof of stake is really kind of underwhelming and because like the deflationary level of ether is like 100 plus, but still having like a decently off the floor level of basal demand for Ethereum block space, which attracts new incomers, and then we start to actually burn meaningful amounts of ETH. The markets heat up, the narrative gets going. Having all of that happen in combination with also having the escape valve for new users to go play on L2, it's like the maximum like spider web that Ethereum can capture. It's like, hey, we have high fees and we're really bullish for all the Ether investing in like institutions of the world, institutions down to the individual level, and then like, hey, that made you interested about Ethereum, come use it, it's really really cheap. Like we get both, and that's always been what Ethereum has always been about, is optimizations for as wide as a reach as possible. And like once things are actually in shape, we get to see like how wide of a net Ethereum as a entity actually gets to cast itself.
And speaking of layer two as well, I mean, since our last live stream, Uniswap went live
Mm-hmm.
on Optimism, and they haven't really done any kind of like big marketing push with it. There's only 6 assets that you can trade, and
Mm-hmm.
there's no centralized exchange bridges into Optimism just yet. But they're getting some really great traction already. Like I think the TVL was up to something like 7 million. Daily trading volumes are like averaging 1.52 million, sort of thing. Optimism is doing more fees. Like the Optimism network itself is doing more fee revenue than most of the Ethereum killers
Mm-hmm.
out there. And Synthetics just went live with their exchange on
Right.
there with Quenta yesterday. So I mean, man, like layer two summer really is a thing. Like maybe it's like a late summer, or like maybe I know it's like 1 month left of summer for you guys, but like maybe it just extends into like Southern Hemisphere summer as well. So we have like 6 months of like layer two summer. But it just really does feel like everything's coming together. And people often criticize me when I say that and say, "Oh, you're just like this is just recency bias. Like you're bullish because the market's bullish." It's like, guys, like I was bullish even if the
Yeah.
market was falling. Like, don't
Uh-huh.
give me that. Don't give me that. Like I'm always going to be bullish. But I
Right.
think right now, even in the face of all this regulatory stuff that's coming out, right? Like we've all seen over the past couple of days, like the crypto markets want to go up.
Right.
Like even like they just want to go up. Like
Mm-hmm.
and I think we've discussed this before, or at least I've discussed it on my refuel episodes before. when bad news doesn't make the market dump, it means
Right.
the market is really, really
Bullish.
bullish.
Right. And honestly, like while the regulatory FUD is like legitimately concerning, and I'm prepared to like put on my boxing gloves and like get into the slog and fight it out, like doing whatever I need to do, at the end of the day, it's bullish. It's bullish. The attention is good. It's
Mhm.
legitimizing. It's focusing. Everyone is talking about digital assets, regardless of whether you're in the industry or out of it. The government is talking about it. Like regulators are talking about it. Just like fintech is talking about it. Everyone's talking about digital assets. That's why we're getting regulated. And so, like, regulation, it needs to be good. It needs to be good, thoughtful regulation. Bad regulation is bearish, but what's going on right now is bullish. It's a sign of bullish attention onto the industry. I remember when Ether was like in Bitcoin, Ether was 33,000 plus, and Bitcoin was like 45,000 plus. I remember people like Dimitri Kofinas, and he wasn't the only one. I think also the stalwart from Bloomberg, yeah,
Yeah, Bloomberg.
Joe
Yeah.
Weisenthal. Yeah, they were both saying like, hey, like I believe in crypto, but like I don't think the markets are pricing in regulation at all right now. And then we
Mhm.
dumped, and now we're getting regulated. And now that we're going through the regulation trials, like companies are going to be able to feel more comfortable investing in the space. Like, oh, look, they're like the crypto industry and the regulators are doing their backs and forths. I'm going to slip my bids right into the market. That's
Mhm.
what's going
Mhm.
on, I think, or for the rest of the year, I say.
Yeah, I mean that's the bullish case you can definitely make. In that, if the crypto, I mean, it will get regulated, but like as long as the regulations aren't like completely
Stupid,
strangling,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
yeah, exactly, it kind of like completely legitimizes this asset class for institutions and paves the way for things like ETFs and more kind of like structured, heavily regulated products. Which yeah, just allow more capital into the ecosystem. So you could definitely spin it as being bullish if it doesn't go through in its current form, because I'm sure a lot of you have seen on Twitter, Jake Chavinsky did a really great thread today breaking this all down. You
Right.
should go check it out on Twitter. But essentially, the current regulations in the infrastructure bill, which again is just insane because like it's just politicians trying to sneak things into an
Hmm.
infrastructure bill. But essentially, they basically the worst regulations that could happen in crypto. It makes every operator, everything, like not
Right.
even operator, it makes like every smart contract miner, everything
Right. If
into
you
the same
touch
kind
it,
of
if you touch it at all.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So
You
like
have to
if
like
you make one single transaction from your MetaMask, there's like
uh,
three people that need to like do reporting. There's Dan Finley at MetaMask. There's whoever ran the transaction at Infura. There's whoever mined the block and put it into
hmm
the all three of those people need to be reporting entities for your transaction. That's
And
how granted it gets.
yes, and I don't actually think this was done on purpose. I think
No,
this
it
is
wasn't.
just lack of
It
education.
was
I
just
think these
being
the
dumb,
people
yeah.
that wrote this have no idea how any of this stuff works, and that's actually positive because it means if we can educate them and we can convince them that hey, this isn't how it
Right.
works, we need to
Right.
change this.
Right.
But like this is the negotiation tactic though. You always go in hard, right? You
Right.
go in like as hard as you
Right.
can, and then you compromise over time, and that's how
Hmm.
people get what they want, like through a negotiation. But yeah, in its current form, it would be disastrous, and all the people freaking out about it are right to freak out about it, and them freaking out about it is good because then they're going to go fight for us. Like I
Right.
know Jake, he's part of like a cohort of lawyers and everything like that that are definitely trying their best to kind of work this out. So I don't like I know that this infrastructure bill, I think it's getting voted on today or something like that, and it's like a must pass bill. But typically these bills can have changes right up until
Right.
like the vote, right? Like seconds before the vote sort of thing, which I think is insane because like you don't have enough time to review new kind of legislation. But this is just like how these things work, and it's all politics. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think the market is actually pretty smart right now in knowing that like I think there's a little chance that these things will go through as is. And just generally regulation, yeah, definitely is bullish in a way. And at the same time, like it was expected. Like, come on,
Hmm.
like there's no way the governments would never come after crypto if it got big enough. Like we
Right.
all knew this, and anyone who's acting surprised was being naive, I think.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's a sign of maturity. It's like we need to pass through these trials to get to the next phase of crypto. Like it's not all fun and games. Like I would say probably DeFi Summer was going to be the best like fun to not fun ratio ever in crypto, and it's not going to be like that. It was so incredibly fun, and the amounts of not fun things were not very high. Like the worst
Mm-hmm.
case was rug pulls. Like no one, there's no like no one was committing fraud. I mean, some people were. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. It was like the crypto industry had way too much fun, and the regulators just like somehow didn't pay attention to it. 1 year later, they're finally coming back around and be like, okay, there's some like real value here. Like you got to pay basically it's all like you got to pay the taxes, right? Like they want to just make sure that they want to collect their taxes the right way. Which
and this isn't to say that we're like bullish on regulation and we want it to happen or anything, but it's a kind of balance between what we want to happen and what we know is going to happen. We don't want regulation, but we know it's going to happen regardless. And how do we fight back against that? How do we make true DeFi? Well, we decentralize fucking everything, right? Like we need to decentralize the front ends, the infrastructure, the teams. We need to make sure that this stuff is actually unstoppable. And, you know, there was that Uniswap drama. I mean, this is a good segue into what happened with Uniswap, where they took some of the tokens off of their own front end and you couldn't trade them through that front end anymore. And people say, well, this is censorship. And it's like, okay, yes, in a way it's censorship, but it doesn't matter. This is just one front end.
It's
like, this is not
censorship of a front end. It's the most inconsequential thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the protocol itself is fine. The smart contracts are fine. They can't actually do anything to the smart contracts. So people were just like, I think either trying to FUD on purpose, uneducated about it, or just like plain old, like had no idea what they were talking about.
Right.
But it was just wild to see the different reactions. It's like people were saying, oh, this is a slippery slope. A slippery slope for what? Like we knew the centralized front ends would always have centralized points of failure. Like I don't understand why people say like it's a slippery slope, because as long as the smart contracts remain truly decentralized, no one can alter them, right? And no one's going to adopt. If Uniswap said, okay, we're rolling out Uni V4, it's going to have like a list of tokens that you can't trade on it, no one's going to use that. Like, you know what I mean? It's so insane that these kind of like talking points come up. And I really do think people need to realize that every single front end that lives on like just a normal kind of a web hosting service or whatever is centralized. There are ways to do decentralized front ends, but then there are other centralized points of failure too. Sometimes, like some infrastructure stuff out there and things like that. So you need to just realize that the difference between the protocol layer and the interface layer is a key difference, and it is exactly why we call this stuff DeFi. We don't call it DeFi because of the front ends. Like that's not the point. We call it DeFi because of the protocol level stuff and the smart contracts and being able to kind of, I guess, like make those truly decentralized. But in saying that, there are a lot of smart contracts today that have admin keys or multi-sigs or backdoors or whatever in them that you know, will decentralize over time. At least that's what they say. But they definitely are stoppable. Like if a regulator went after kind of like a team who has an admin key and said you need to do something on this protocol, and that team refused, well, that team would go to jail. Like, let's be honest. So to avoid that, you need to make the contracts purely decentralized. You need to get rid of the admin keys.
Like the most frustrating thing about this whole event is how like Uniswap, this is actually the second time we've done this with Uniswap. Like Uniswap like banned some countries from accessing the front end. And like it was disappointing to see the same actors that caused a big uproar last time. And then like I know they were listening to our response on Twitter, crypto Twitter, about like, hey, like doing exactly what we just said right now. And then those same actors come around for round 2 this time. Like, oh, I told you Uniswap was decentralized. Like, dude, we had this conversation. Like, I know you know this isn't how it works, yet you're still talking about it. And it's just kind of goes to show like how many enemies for some reason Ethereum has.
You know, it's funny. Like you may be referencing Alex Gladstein or Gladstein. How he says.
Yep.
Yeah, he was literally spreading false information, like literally. And the thing is, I don't know if he actually knows better. I think his hate for Ethereum blinds him to these sorts of stuff. But he was basically doing victory lap, saying, "Yeah, I see. I told you that Uniswap was centralized." And I mean, I don't know, man. Like, it's actually so sad to see people that hate something so much that they spread false information. Like, I personally never spread any false information about things that even like I'm not a fan of. Like Bitcoin, like obviously I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm not going to go out there and spread like false information about Bitcoin or anything like that. I sometimes like kind of harp on about Bitcoin's weak points, but they're legitimate weak points. They're not like actual things that aren't true.
Sir, they think that's false information.
Yeah, I mean, but they can think whatever they want. The facts are there. Like I know the one thing that I bring up a lot is the dwindling security budget because of the block reward going down. But they're basing their truth on the fee revenue making up for that. But if we look at the evidence, the fee revenue's been going down for Bitcoin over the years. Like
not in dollar terms, in Bitcoin terms. In Bitcoin terms.
Yeah. Yes, but even in dollar terms, the growth has not matched the block reward going subsidy halving at all.
Yeah.
Like not even close to it. And long term, there's really no reason why the fee revenue should be high on Bitcoin. But just anyway, like when I see that, it's just like it's funny how like people will believe one truth and then have their own version of the truth. But there is objective truth in some of this stuff. Like Uniswap being decentralized, the contracts is objective, right? Unless you believe Ethereum is centralized, then you can
Right.
make up whatever argument you
Right.
want because you can basically say like everything on Ethereum is centralized,
Which people
and that's
have
what they
taken
do.
that liberties.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day, it's kind of, and I think this is why people get into so many arguments about this sort of stuff as well, is because everyone has their own version of the truth. If you actually believe Ethereum is centralized, well, then of course you're going to believe everything else is
Right.
centralized on top of it.
Right.
And it's funny because like some people do actually believe Ethereum is centralized, even though it's just. I mean, it seems so insane and bizarre to us for people to say that. But like if that's what they truly believe, then that's just the way it's going to be, and there's not much we can do about it. That's what they believe, and that's it.
Fortunately, I've always been of the opinion that like the Bitcoin community and Bitcoiners, who is largely who we're talking about right now, hit their stride in growth really, really early in their lifespan, and then hit the
Hmm.
limits of their growth also relatively early. So like the Bitcoin community dominated all of crypto up until I would say like mid to late 2020. And the Bitcoin community grew really, really fast, and it gave them a sense that like they're going to keep on growing and take over the whole entire world. But instead of like the Bitcoin community growing to like 10% of its total potential by the year 2020, Bitcoin being like 11 years old, it actually grew to like 70% of its potential, and it's actually kind of already like tapped out. And that's kind of
Hmm.
why I actually I don't really know. It's kind of hard to compare them these days, but I kind of think the Ethereum community is bigger than the Bitcoin community at this point, just because like the CryptoPunk community is also an
Hmm.
Ethereum community, right? Like
Hmm.
the Audius community is also an Ethereum community, and so it's not like Ethereum by name. We don't have a bunch of like cyber Ethereum hornets going around, but that's because we all are more decentralized and more fractured out into all these different like micro disciplines, and we all make up Ethereum at large. When you add them all together, I think we're way larger than the Bitcoin community.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you do look at the kind of like stuff built on top, I think so. I mean, especially in the NFT area. But like, yeah, the Bitcoin community, so like, it still surprises me how big that community is. But
Yeah,
at the
sure.
same time, it's funny because like I think a lot of people want Bitcoin to thrive and go up because they believe that if Bitcoin's doing well, the rest of the market does well. And you know what? They're right to believe that because that's been the pattern for such a long time. Whereas I don't think that I don't know if that's going to be the pattern forever. I do think that a lot of this stuff will stand on its own merits. I think Ethereum is pretty much standing on its own kind of like merits these days. Yes, it moves with Bitcoin, but you could make an argument that Ethereum has been leading the market at certain points in time in certain amounts of time. So
Most of the
yeah,
time during bull markets, yeah, all of
yeah,
all
yeah,
the bull markets.
exactly. So yeah, I mean, just like looking at it from that perspective and kind of looking at it from a community like perspective, as in the things built on top. Yeah, you could make that. You could definitely make that argument, but it's hard to quantify.
Yeah.
But I think that more new people are interested in Ethereum and the things built on top of Ethereum than Bitcoin, at least. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, no, 100%. While we are roughly halfway through, I want to plug the Daily Gwei
Thank you, sir.
in the YouTube comments. Hold on, I didn't have it up right. Oh no. But also while I'm doing that, Sazzle, here's something that maybe you haven't heard of that I think you're gonna get really, really stoked about. Is a panel that we're doing on Tuesday on Bankless. It's the eve of EIP. Here's the Daily Gwei YouTube channel in the YouTube comments. So go follow Anthony Sassano's YouTube channel where he does stuff like this every single day. Um, so panel on Tuesday, my morning time, so your evening time.
Mm,
It's going to be our typical Tuesday live stream, but it's going instead of me and Ryan moderating, we are letting Tim Bako take over, and it's going
mm-hmm,
to be Tim Bako moderating with Barnaby from the EF, Hazu, Light Clients if you know him, and then
mm-hmm,
also Micah
mm,
Zotul.
mm,
Yeah, and it's all going to be an EIP1559 experts panel. And so,
mm-hmm.
literally, the questions that Ryan and I aren't smart enough to ask, Tim is going to ask all of these like EIP1559 like gigabrains on the eve before EIP1559. So I know you're going to be super stoked to get all that information downloaded into your ears.
Yeah. I mean, that's a killer lineup for a panel. I mean, you couldn't have a better people on for that for sure. I mean, it's funny. A lot of people obviously know about Hazu, but and Tim to an extent, but like light clients and Micah,
Mm-hmm.
they do not have a big public profile, but
Sure.
they are definitely in. I mean, Light Clients himself, he's been pretty involved with the merge as well. Like he's the one who had spearheaded the Rayonism project at one of the ETH Global hackathons to do like a merge slash and sharding testnet. So yeah, he's huge within the Ethereum core protocol research kind of like area there. But and Micah as well has been very active over like many years, and he's I think he spends a lot of time thinking about the game theory of things. I remember he was very active in the Augur community early on too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely as you described them, Giga Brains. It's gonna be that's gonna be a fun panel for sure.
So I actually met like clients in Paris and had a kind of an interesting pre-discussion about this whole panel.
Hmm.
And so I want to get your take on this question. What is the main purpose of EIP 1559? What does EIP 1559 do?
The main purpose is to smoothen out transaction fees in my mind.
Sorry, I got to make sure my dog's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, the main purpose is for me like to improve the fee market by smoothing out the transaction fees. That is the main and original purpose. Like, but the thing is, it depends who you ask now,
Mm-hmm.
because like you ask someone else, they'll say, "Oh, the main purpose is to burn ETH." It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, that's a purpose, but
Mm-hmm.
the funny thing is, I actually don't think there's a main purpose. I think there's
Right.
like multiple things that are equal in
Right.
importance,
That's
right?
yeah, okay. So that's exactly what I said, and like clients thought that that was like an interesting take. I don't think EIP 1559 actually does anything. I think it only does peripheral things, and each of these
Uh-huh.
peripheral things are all kind of composed together into this thing called EIP 1559.
Yeah, it's definitely funny because like most people would have no idea about anything except the fee burn when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to 1559. But I don't think saying that the fee burn is the purpose of 1559 is correct.
Actually, I
And
would say that is incorrect because the fee burn was actually done to like kind of shove something under the rug. It was like,
uh-huh.
shit, like we can't pay the miners anymore. What do we do with this ether now? Oh shit, let's
Mhm.
just burn it. Like that's
Yeah.
EIP. It was actually literally not meant to burn ether.
Yeah. There were other proposals that came later that said, oh well, instead of burning the ETH, we could just split it up so that miners couldn't game the
Mhm.
mechanism. And then everyone's like, no, we
No,
want to
no, just
burn
burn
the
it,
ETH.
just burn it, just burn it. Yeah.
So, but the thing is that the burning of ETH is it also serves a separate function, which is more economical, right? Where it takes the value that's being generated on the Ethereum network instead of kind of like socializing it the cost onto all ETH holders, because the it goes to miners, right? And they dump it. It burns it, so it actually increases the value over time of passive ETH holders, and even active ones like stakers and stuff like that. I think that but yeah, it just depends who you ask. But at the same time, I agree with you. There's no main purpose. It's just
Mhm.
like all these things coming together to, I mean, improve the fee market, improve like its economics and Ethereum's monetary policy. And it's just like it really is like a beautiful thing. Like the people who hate 1559 normally harp on about the fee burn, and it's like, well, why do you hate the fee burn? Like, who cares if it's going to make number go up? Like everything's about number go up at the end of the day. Like
Mhm.
I don't know what these people think they're getting paid in, and if they thought that they'd still be able to work in this industry if ETH was like $1. Like it's bizarre to me that people would hate the value of things going up, because I think, so this is maybe just like a bit of an aside here. I think when people kind of like correlate prices going up, they correlate it with like Lambos and like people getting rich and people
Right.
like splurging money or whatever. But really, like there's for sure that aspect of it, right? And there's a lot of people who do that and only want that aspect of it. But at the same time, I always use this example with people. Look at how much ETH the Ethereum Foundation has. It's just one example. They have, I think last time I checked, 400,000 ETH or something left. Every time the price of ETH goes up $1, that means that the Ethereum Foundation has another $400,000 to spend on Ethereum protocol, development, giving out grants, funding things, running the kind of like DevCon and stuff like that. So, and that's just one. Like, think about all the other kind of like companies working within crypto that hold ETH on their balance sheet, people that hold ETH that kind of like spend that later on and buy different things, and the money gets spread out. Think about all the other tokens that go up in value and like fund things. So, and the burn is really just there to essentially make it so that all the value being generated by the Ethereum network, at least most of the value being generated by the Ethereum network, actually goes back to ETH asset, which is used to secure the network.
Right.
Like it's just insane to me. It's like, how do you think Ethereum is secured? It's not by miners alone. The miners are only mining because they're getting paid to do it. Same with the stakers. The stakers are only going to stake because they're getting paid to do it. So if you take away the monetary incentive, you get less security. It's literally mapped one to one. There is no kind of like middle ground here.
And that's all the first order consequences as well, right? But there's so many second, third, fourth order consequences, and like starting with like some of the first big projects that got built on Ethereum, they were largely built by like ETH maxis, right? Who had a bunch of ether and they had the incentives to do so. And like because they built those projects, Ethereum became more useful and ether went up in price, and so it rewarded some of those early Ethereum like believers with more money. And so who else is going to build the next useful Ethereum application other than the people that just got rewarded for building the first ones? And it's just a virtuous cycle of just like people that believe in ETH, build on Ethereum, make their ETH more useful, make their ETH more valuable, have more funds to build and invest in more things. And it's kind of a big conversation that we've been having on Bankless is like, when are the institutions coming? When are the institutions coming? Or pardon the dog. Or do we just build our own goddamn institutions? And like to some degree, like the faster and higher that ETH price goes up, we can actually build our own institutions without having to worry about other institutions coming and like validating what we're doing here. Like, are the institutions coming? Is actually coming from a place of weakness, saying like, institutions come and please like buy my bags because I'm insecure about my project, or I don't give a flying F about you, Mr. or Mrs. Institution. Like, I'm just going to make my bag super valuable regardless of whether you approve or not. And I'm a much better fan of the former path. Or excuse me, the latter path.
Yeah. And I think one big kind of like second order effect of the ETH price going up is allegiance, right? People, and freedom, because at the end of the day, like you and I are able to do what we do because ETH price went up. Like we both pretty much like quit our full-time jobs around the same time, right? When ETH was going up, because we didn't need to do it anymore. I personally really enjoyed working at SET full-time and everything like that. And I'm still an advisor to them. But like I wanted to do a bunch of other things, like the Daily Gwei is a big part of it. I wanted to advise and help other projects and stuff like that. And that was only possible because the ETH price went up, because I can sustain myself with that. And me and you aren't the only people doing this. There are so many people now that have done this, and they're adding value back to Ethereum because ETH gave them so much, and ETH went up in price and things like that. So those are, and there's like a massive allegiance there too because of that. So those second order effects like cannot be understated in any kind of way. And that's just something people miss, because when you look at the surface level, you look at people showing off their Lambos and, showing off their fancy dinners and stuff like that. You kind of like, maybe some people are grossed out by the people showing off their wealth. I personally don't really care, but I think you need to kind of like recenter and look at the kind of like stuff that maybe people don't brag about and don't show on Twitter. Like there's no way for me to show that. Like I'm not going to put a tweet out where I say, hey guys, like ETH made me financially independent, so now I'm doing my stuff. Like I don't want to say that. I'm not like that kind of person. So, but whereas people who buy Lambos and show it off on Twitter, I mean, they're a different kind of breed, right? They kind of like they kind of like want to show off that wealth. So yeah, I think it's just different people.
Yeah, and the Lambo people aren't tend to like the Ethereum core community regardless, right? The Lambo people tend to be a little bit more to the trader types. I think the deeper and deeper you get into the Ethereum community, the Lambos are just dumb to the Ethereum people. Like if the overlap between CryptoPunk owners and Lambo owners, I don't think there is an overlap. I'd be willing to bet that.
Yeah, and you could definitely argue that, like, CryptoPunks, like buying an expensive punk is like buying
the Lambos, yeah,
yeah,
but it's a CryptoPunk.
Yeah. But like, and it's funny. It's just like I'm not judging anyone like how they spend or show off their wealth, but just in terms of like looking at things as like a surface level stuff, I think a lot of people have like this, I guess, image in their head of like gross wealth, and they think that crypto enables a lot of gross wealth, and it does. Like think about the amount of scammers that have made a lot of money in this industry, and I totally get that. But I think that's kind of like focusing in on the negatives and the bad aspects of this number going up instead of the good aspects of it. And I think Ethereum as an ecosystem, besides like the grossness of the 2017 ICO, I think generally Ethereum as an ecosystem has done well in this kind of like space. I think we learned from 2017 And even DeFi Summer wasn't even like, there was a lot of money flowing around, but it wasn't even that gross, I would say. I think DeFi Summer, a lot of that money got reinvested into various projects, and DeFi actually, finally grew into what it was, we all knew it was going to be. So there was a lot of positive effects from that wealth creation.
Yeah, the DeFi Summer kind of feels like DeFi's like puberty moment to me.
Mm.
Like mainly the growth of the governance tokens. Like that, the governance tokens was like, this is the adult version of DeFi, rather than like the kid version, which is like more of just a playground.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's funny. Definitely DeFi Summer is what kicked off DeFi into mainstream consciousness, which, like, if you look back in May of 2020, I'm pretty sure Uniswap was only doing $10 million of 24-hour volume, which is like nothing compared to what it does. It does $1 billion plus today of 24-hour volume. So, and that's only on layer one. Like, if you're going to account for layer two, once that gets more adoption, these things are just going to get so much bigger than we can even imagine. And I think, yeah, DeFi Summer, I mean, that's a good way of putting it, was like the puberty moment for DeFi for sure.
So speaking of, well, I guess it's specifically not speaking of that, Vitalik's big talk at ECC was all about like Ethereum beyond DeFi and all the non-financial use cases of Ethereum. What's your take on that? Do you think that that's what's coming next, or what's up with that?
I mean, I think it's already here. Like, I don't think we have to wait for this. I think we're already seeing a lot of these things that don't kind of like have direct connections to DeFi taking off. Like ENS, for as an example, has been around for a while. A lot of us have had our ENS names for a while, and more people are getting on that train.
Yeah, but is that not DeFi? Because
it's not like, so this is the thing. It's not directly DeFi, right? Like, you can say that anything's DeFi because it's a financial thing. Like, but to me, DeFi is like a core set of things, like money markets, exchange, like derivatives, that sorts of stuff, right?
Okay.
But there's like the kind of like things that hang off of that and that can tap into that. Like ENS, for example, you can trade ENS names and stuff like that, and you can maybe one day you can use your ENS as like collateral for a loan or whatever. But yeah, I feel like there's definitely a distinction to be made, and same with like NFTs. Like NFTs are definitely part of DeFi because you trade them on exchanges and stuff like that. But
anything with a token is like already at least 50% finance, if not 100%.
Yeah, but exactly. So I think that, but when I think about DeFi, I definitely think about the actual hard DeFi, as I like to call it, like the money markets, the exchange, all that sort of stuf. Rather than like things that hang off of it. But I think that's that. Yeah, I think that might be what like Vitalik kind of like goes on about too, is that like, yes, everything, there's a kind of like aspect of DeFi to it, but if you talk about hard versus soft DeFi, maybe that's the distinction that needs to be made. And I think, yeah, ENS, like Web3 stuff, like decentralized social media and stuff like that is definitely going to have like a lot of aspects of DeFi built into it. There's going to be tipping, there's going to be like one click, exchanging of assets and stuff like that. There's already extensions that do this with existing Twitter. But it's not going to be like hard DeFi. It's not going to be considered a financial product at its core.
Won't be in the finance textbooks. Fair enough. Okay, I take that point. Yeah, when Ryan and I were talking about this, we kind of came to the conclusion that like, well, like to do any sort of transaction on Ethereum costs money, and that cost is only going to go up over time. Therefore, the only thing you're going to do on Ethereum are things that financially benefit you, and therefore we're into DeFi. So like anything you do on Ethereum is by definition DeFi. Right?
I would argue that's layer one though, because you're talking about what transactions price out other transactions. I mean, I would actually go a step further and say that DeFi will get priced out by layer two proofs on layer one, because layer two proofs will be worth more.
I mean, how long do you think that's going to take? That's going to take.
It'll take a while.
It'll take a while.
But it's still going to happen, I think, and because of the fact that layer two proofs are going to have like tons of economic value to them, and
they're just going to be DeFi bundles. Those are just DeFi bundles pricing out DeFi singles.
But they're also going to be bundles of other things that happen, like other kind of like things that hang off of DeFi but aren't directly DeFi.
But then all the L1 things that I was talking about are just going to be the same thing I'm going to say about the L2, where everything is getting bundled up again.
Well, I mean, I guess like it depends on kind of like which L2s as well, because there's going to be like L2s that are going to be specific to one use case and aren't going to be permissionless to deploy to. So for example, there's going to be L2s that have like just NFTs on them, right? Or just like a decentralized social media on it. Now, layer one space is obviously constrained, and you might have like these layer twos that are app specific, being priced out of layer one because they're not as valuable as the maybe the DeFi L2s. And maybe to kind of like fix that, these kind of like NFT based L2s need to maybe migrate or like go to a more valuable place so they can actually kind of like share the load there. It's actually going to be kind of funny to see how that plays out. Like, are the NFT specific L2s going to be priced out by the DeFi specific L2s on layer one? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's going to take a while to answer these questions, but
Right.
logically it should happen, because logically the most valuable transactions are the ones that will get settled on layer one first. And the L2 operators are going to be like, well, you know, these are all super important transactions. These are generating a ton of fees for our network. We want to be first, and we're going to pay the fees to do so. But I think it's going to be a while before we figure that out. It's going to be many years, I think.
I think there's going to be some sort of elegant relationship between like L2's demand or desire to make an L1 transaction and EIP1559, right? Because EIP1559 is the tide that shifts up and down, and so are the gas markets. But now with EIP1559, the water level's clear. And so I'm not an expert in this, but like my gut takes tend to be pretty accurate over time. Is like we have the EIP 1559 tide going up and down, and then we have all these L2s with economic activity on them. And as the engines of the L2s run, it starts to collect and pool fees. And once the fees of the L2 get high enough to meet the water level of EIP 1559, wherever it is, it'll make a transaction on chain, and then that pool will deplete, and then everything will go onto the chain, and then they'll repeat. Like the economic activity of the engine will start to accrue some savings, some transaction fees, some savings. They grow, and eventually it grows high enough to the point where it's like, oh, we just met the threshold for wherever the demand to execute a transaction on L1 is. We'll make a transaction. And so really the how lively every single L2 is going to be a function of how much economic activity is on each L2. And so the more economic activity that's on an L2, the more lively it is with the actual Ethereum, how up to date it is with Ethereum, because they can generate more transaction fees on the L2 and sync the L2 to the L1 at a faster tick rate. That's kind of been my mental model for how this works out in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I would actually say that like with 1559, we also have, this is like a benefit that doesn't get talked about enough. We also have like an on-chain gas oracle now, where you're going to have predictability about the gas price because of the base fee.
Very
So these
important
L2s will be able to basically time their transactions, their proof transactions, like much better than they would. So like all this stuff's just coming together, man. Like it's amazing that, you know, people kind of say that people don't realize that 1559 is not just like an upgrade for, you know, ETH burning and stuff like that, and smoothing out the transaction fees for users. It's also a massive upgrade for L2s. And we have L2s coming online now and going to take advantage of this. So I mean, it's amazing how it's all coming together. And then the merge in like Q1, hopefully, with the issuance dropping, like the triple halvening, which is, I think the triple halvening is even more bullish than 1559 by a long shot, because we're basically dropping the issuance by about 90% instantly, like literally like that, like a switch being turned. Whereas with 1559, it's more of an ebb and flow thing, where some days we'll have like really high ETH being burned, other days we won't. But also the merge and the triple halvening means that we're gonna, if the gas price is above like 11 Gwei at current ETH staked amount, we're going to be burning more ETH than we're issuing each year. So it's just it's really cool how like we've all been looking forward to this for a long time, but it's all coming together in a relatively kind of like same time, like 6-12 months sort of thing, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and all of these things play into each other, like you said, and even sharding plays into this as well, because while sharding scales out the base chain, in theory, over the long term, it'll generate more aggregate fees. And so I totally agree with you that like proof of stake is bullish in the near term, like now, then much more than EIP 1559 is. But I think EIP 1559 is actually the most bullish in the long term. But also, granted, like the reduction of issuance is so incredibly important. It's like you can't parse these things apart from each other. They're all one coherent design structure for Ethereum, and that's kind of why it's been so fun to watch Ethereum like develop over time. Is like, oh yeah, we have proof of stake and sharding. These are our two solutions, and then you realize that those two things actually work really well together, not just sharding on proof of work. And then you add in EIP1559 and the nature and the relationship between proof of stake and sharding. Those are all interrelated. And then you bring on L2s, and like the demand for transacting on Ethereum because of L2s just goes even higher. So you have some assurances that the floor of EIP1559 is going to be high enough so that it burns enough ether. So that also relates to all the other things. And thank God we have sharding, which can sync all different L2 transactions as fast as they need to. Like, it all weaves together. It's just, and it's why the right word for Ethereum is always a nexus. It's always a nexus, left and right, because everything touches every other thing in like this very elegant way. And so I've been you and me and everyone else have been patiently waiting for like Ethereum in its final form to come about, and it's just absolutely been worth the wait.
Yeah, and it's funny because it may feel like forever to people, because like time in crypto just moves like differently
Weird,
to time in real
mm-hmm.
life. But like, yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it has been a while, to be fair, like 2 years, over 2 years since 1559 was first proposed. Proof of stake has been like an idea since Ethereum was first concepted in like late 2013. But like in terms of like the actual movement on proof of stake, I would say 2018 to 2020. So it was like we had like the bulk of the movement, the spec coming together, finally the development happening, and then the chain launching in December 1st, 2020. And now like and all these kind of like foundations that have been laid over the years are coming together now. Like pretty much, I mean, I think 2015. So Ethereum's 6th birthday is obviously today.
Oh yeah,
but
happy 6th birthday, Ethereum.
Yeah. But like since July 30th, 2015 to I think like 2020, maybe June 2020, Ethereum was just laying the foundations for all that's happening right now, because we had DeFi Summer kickoff, we had the NFT renaissance over like I guess like the winter in the northern hemisphere, so like Q4, Q1 sort of thing, and now we're having the L2 stuff happening, and you know, we're finally going to merge to proof of stake. We're going to have Ethereum's monetary policy finally kind of cemented with 1559 and proof of stake. It's just like, it's funny, like once you've got the foundations built out, everything else comes together really quickly, and sharding finally as well, like probably in the next couple of years or something like that. So I mean, yeah, it's never, I don't think it's ever been a more exciting time to be in Ethereum than it is right now.
And that's why the regulators are here. Like,
Yeah,
like all these good things that can't be too good, because you know, as awesome and powerful as Ethereum's about to become, like people feel it. People feel it in the legacy world, regardless of whether they can articulate it or not.
Exactly. So yeah, we've come full circle, and as you said at the start, I think regulations, people paying attention to us is good. It means that we're going mainstream. That's exactly what we wanted, but we just have to be careful. We need to make sure that these regulations aren't, you know, silly and restricting to the point where it just doesn't make any sense. And I think we will get there. I think that we have enough good people on our side debating and arguing and putting forward our mission towards these regulators. And I think that given the nature of what we're building, we can fend off these regulators just with code as well, which we should definitely keep trying to do. Right?
Yeah, the whole if we can do it, we should. It's kind of the whole point of what we're doing here, anyways. Anthony, you've gotten a bunch of compliments on your NFT display behind you. That's a kitty NFT, isn't it?
Yeah, it's rotating between the Kitty Block Explorer NFT and the EIP1559 supporter NFT every couple of minutes. So yeah, it's funny. Like I'm pretty proud of the fact that I was the first one to mint the 1559 supporter NFT. Got one of 1559. But
is it actually one, or is that just in your head? Oh, that's actually one of 1559.
No, I was the first one to mint it. So yeah, one of 1559.
Very cool.
Which is very cool for sure. And Kitty made that one as well. Like he's awesome. Like he's a good friend. He's really awesome. I love his work, and he spends a lot of time making sure that it's detailed. But for those of you who want to know what the display is, it's called a Mural 2 from Netgear. But there's a bunch of them out there. If you just Google like NFT displays, there's so many companies popping up now. Like there's dedicated companies coming up with like displays, and there's different ones you can get. I think I want to get a square one next, because with a square one, you can display like a certain NFTs better than you can on something like this, because this is like portrait or landscape. So, I mean, I think that's just awesome as well. Like I can't wait when I get my own place to have all this like properly on the wall and stuff, like I have a bigger room, and then just have people over and they're like, "What's that?" It's like, "Wow,
Let me tell you.
wow.
I'm so glad you asked.
Let me tell you about this NFT thing."
Where should I start? Well, in 2014, this guy named Vitalik.
Yeah, he was really frustrated with World of Warcraft and the perils of centralization.
And that's why I don't have any real paintings in my house.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
All right.
Well.
All right, guys. That is the hour. So if you guys are watching the YouTube chat, all 165 of you, once again, this is the Bankless Daily Gwei semi-regular Friday, Saturday morning weekly live stream. If you guys don't know Anthony, which it would be weird if you didn't, but if you don't, here's his YouTube channel where he does Daily Gwei stuff every single day, talks about what's going on in Ethereum. It's what I use to keep up to date because this guy lives, breathes, and will eventually die Ethereum, as I will as well. And so there's his YouTube channel, and also subscribe to Bankless because reasons. Anthony, good to talk to you.